Welcome back to Cookies for Breakfast. I'm Danny LaBrecque, and we are celebrating Pride by throwing it all the way back to 2021 when my good friend Lindz Amer came to visit with us and talk about Queer Kids Stuff. Lindz is the creator and host of Queer Kids Stuff, the first kids show all about LGBTQ plus kids, parents, caregivers, educators, their loved ones, and their allies. We love Lindz so much, and I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. We're also extra excited because Lindz just released their first book, Rainbow Parenting, Your Guide to Raising Queer Kids and Their Allies. This is the essential guide for parents and caregivers to raising queer-friendly children in a gender-affirming space. This is for everyone, and we really hope you pick up your copy. Enjoy this conversation, and we'll say a little bit more after the interview. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to what I'm calling Cookies for Breakfast, and you're about to find out why. My name is Danny LaBrecque. I am a children's media creator and host, and I've been in the field of early childhood development and education for about 20 years. And recently, I was reading about Facebook's announcement to launch a version of Instagram for kids under the age of 13. And something about that didn't feel right to me when I think about data and privacy and the experiences that we have had as adults with social media as we know it today. And the idea of bringing young children into that world gives me pause. Respectfully, it's important not to critique something that doesn't exist yet. I want to be careful about speculation, but I'm also wary, and I want to start talking about it instead of just waiting and seeing what happens. So excited for today's guest. I'm going to do a little bit of a setup to introduce my friend and colleague. So I started in early childhood education. I wanted to go into children's media because when I was a kid, I saw real adult caregivers, not just the caricatures, not the people pretending to be someone else, but sincere, real human beings that were absolutely present and there for the kid on the other side of the screen. Mr. Rogers, LeVar Burton, Sherry Lewis, Bob Keeshan, many, many, many. And in the mid-aughts, when I was looking at what the children that I taught, when I was looking at their media, it was very difficult to find the human beings. I saw lots of exaggerated personalities, but it was difficult to find people that were just sincerely being themselves. And that made me feel bad. Where are the people? So I decided I wanted to be one of those people. And I started looking around for others, and it was tough. It was really tough to find them until I started looking at different types of screens. There's always caring human beings. You just have to look for them. There's more of them now, and there are people that I admire so much. Again, I'm excited about my host. I am excited about my host, my fellow host that's going to be coming in. But this is how I've pitched my ideas in the past. This is just an exaggeration to set up our conversation. This is not what my personal show is about, but it's an analogy. Imagine walking into a room and saying to the powers that be, I want to grow a garden with children. I want to show them how to work in the soil. I want them to grow the seeds. I want them to make their own decisions and make healthy choices, grow their food. I don't want to just tell them what to think. I want to guide them through the process. I want to be there with them as their educator. And then having the person that you're pitching to respond with, wow, we feel that cookies for breakfast is what kids today really like. Kids want cookies for breakfast. We've given it to them. We've got tons of data and research that shows kids really like cookies for breakfast. So that's what we're selling. That's what we're putting out into the world. Well, I don't think children should have cookies for breakfast. Maybe every once in a while, but that doesn't seem like a very healthy choice. Well, there's oatmeal raisin cookies, but really we want to give kids what they want. We listen to children. Well, I don't know how I feel about that. Well, that's fine. We appreciate and respect what you're doing. Good luck shaking hands, walking you out the door. Oh, okay. Where do you go from there? Cookies for breakfast sell. But sometimes you have to go deeper, and you have to really, truly listen to children. Not just what you think they want, but what's truly healthy for them. My guest today, after this long setup, is fully present with their audience. They truly listen to the kids on the other side of the screen and represent them, and all children, but specifically LGBTQ plus kids and their parents and caregivers. Uh, Lindz Amer is someone that I admire greatly. I'm very excited for them to be part of this conversation. Welcome.
Hello, how's it going?
Very good, very good. And I think I said Lindsay, but correct me if you go with a Lindz.
Yeah, you can call me Lindz. Either way is totally fine. But yeah, call me Lindz, Danny.
Thanks, Lindz. Lindz and I have other things in common in addition to being live action kid show hosts. We both love bow ties
Yes.
and we respect and care about kids. So my first question to you is, could you speak to a moment in your life where you realized, okay, I'm going to be a communicator with and for kids and their families. These sort of screens, this is how I'm going to connect. This is what makes the most sense. Could you speak to the responsibility that comes with that and why you chose that path?
Yeah, for sure. I started in theater. So I started doing theater for young audiences and theater for kids. And when I was in that space and like trying to figure out how I could do what I wanted to do and tell the stories I wanted to tell for the audience that I was trying to target, I found and was quite frustrated with the theater for young audiences space because it was very white, straight, privileged. And there was not a large swath of diversity within the plays that were being done, within the people in the higher echelons of the industry. And that was really frustrating to me as someone who really was passionate and is still very passionate about queer storytelling for children. And I was kind of like doing my master's, like bumping around London for a year, trying to figure out what I was going to do and what my own artistic practice might look like. And I guess I was kind of searching for the correct medium, and I was playing around a lot with online video and YouTube. I was really homesick at the time, living not in the States, and having been, away from. I grew up in New York, and I'd been away from there for at least 5 years at that point. And I just started watching a lot of queer YouTubers. I watched Hannah Hart, I watched Stevie Bobby, and all these really cool, just like really vulnerable, really willing to educate and just kind of show themselves in a public space. And that got me really excited. And I also started looking at channels like SciShow, Crash Course, all these like really educational channels, and people who were building out these just like really robust, wonderful videos on science and history and all these kinds of different spaces. And I was like, okay, so what I want to do isn't out there. How can I fill that gap? Where are kids today? They're in the digital space. I mean, I'm a millennial. I grew up in the 90s. I remember dial up. And I didn't, my brain didn't immediately think, like, I hear a weird word that I haven't heard before. Let's go to the internet and look it up. But today's kids do that. And I kind of did an experiment for myself. I was just kind of like thinking about all of these things. They were all kind of percolating in my brain. And I just did like a Google search, what does gay mean? And the things that came up were kind of like a bland dictionary definition that also had the derogatory definition of the word gay. And there were a couple resources for parents and educators, but there wasn't really anything that was specifically targeting a young age group. And I thought, ding, 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 this is a place where I think I can be because I think this is where my audience is, and meeting them at their level and meeting them where their eyeballs already are. So that was exciting for me. And I just kind of went from there, made a shoestring budget web series that I built up from absolutely nothing. And I've kind of made it to today. And we made 4 seasons, over 50 episodes of that show. And it's kind of grown into a bigger thing where I do live performances around the country, pre-pandemic, and kind of trying to move into TV film and do all this and publishing, doing a lot of stuff around it. But yeah, in terms of like these screens, these social media screens, it really felt like going to the place where kids are every day and showing them something new, something that they didn't know they necessarily needed. And it was a place where I felt like I could fill a gap where there were just gatekeepers around me everywhere. I felt like I was maybe like sneaking through the gate. I was like kind of like wiggling my way through and like somehow kind of popped out the other side. Um, that's what it felt like to me. It felt there was like a little bit of a rebellion to it, which was exciting. But we'll talk about this, of course. But it's definitely a double-edged sword, and I've had quite a bit of experience with that. But that's kind of the origins of how I started kind of moving from theater into kind of digital media creation.
Well, it's a really impressive story and an exciting story, and it's a story that gives me a lot of hope because speaking to one of the points that you brought up, there is this sense of there's this cookie cutter approach, or there has been anyway. I feel like there's a positive shift happening too, where yeah, people that look like me, privileged white people, are often, oh, this is what we're familiar with in live action, so let's do that. Or in animation, we know that the the puppy dog with the big eyes, let's slap some sort of automobile with it, and let's high pitched voices, fast paced, quick cuts, bright colors.
Mhm.
We dub it in lots of different languages, send it around the world, make some big money off of it. um,
Mhm.
it's it's not necessarily, again, truly hearing who's on the other side of the screen. And I love seeing more examples, especially over the past year. I think with everything that's been going on in our society, the people on the receiving end saying, I deserve to be seen, truly be seen, respect and celebrate what's on the outside. You're special, not better than anyone else, but special, truly special deep inside. That lesson, and we can be represented. um, Big shifts in what's being developed in children's media are happening right now.
Yeah, huge, huge shifts. I've like this past year is the first time I really felt the doors start to open for me in my work because I've been pushing and pushing and trying to break into kind of like the larger children's media field for years now. And this is the first year where I really felt like, okay, I think I actually might be able to at least put my foot in the door right now. And my web series, again, built from nothing, totally took off. Press just kind of like created this huge buzz around it, got a lot of attention. You know, if I was a straight cis white dude and I'd gotten that kind of attention around a little web series that I'd built, I would have had a manager, I would have had a licensing deal. Like, I have very little doubt about that. And I've had to work my butt off to be able to get where I am today, and to even just see kind of like a glimpse of a couple of people I've been able to meet who actually get what I'm trying to do and have and believe in the value of what I'm doing is it's a very new feeling for, and it's great to feel that from the other side of things. But it's very new, and there's a lot of disappointment in the fact that it's a new feeling.
Mm. We're going to bring all of that to the lives of children very, very soon with the topic that we're exploring. But before we get to that, could you talk about, as your audience is growing naturally, and people are hearing about what you're doing, and you're getting all of these voices in response, many very, very positive and thankful to be seen, and others that are scared and uneducated and can't see past what they've been born into, conditioned to, lashing out at what's different and having that fear of what's different from what their norm might be. Can you speak to how you've dealt with what I've read about, some really hateful responses to not only your mission, but as an individual, like attacking you, people that don't know you, don't truly know you, but have written and said horrible things. And privileged white guy, I've got this shield maybe I get a little bit of that, but nothing. I can't understand that experience, the vulnerability that goes with it, and the strength and layers that must be built on top of that. I'd love to hear you speak about how you process all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like the story around it is that when I kind of like launched on YouTube and started getting kind of that press attention, my one of the articles written about me got picked up by the Daily Stormer, which is a neo-Nazi publication. So that was my very, very first um, and probably the most intense kind of controversy, pushback, hatefulness, etc. that I got. And that was before I had put any kind of block lists, any kind of filters on my accounts. So I was getting the full force and brunt of the wave all at once. So that was really, really intense. And that was on the very first like pilot episode. Like I barely even launched. I wasn't a public figure. I was not someone who was in the public eye in any way, shape, or form. And it was really, really hard on like just a personal level. I think for me, what was most worrisome, I'm Jewish, and what was the worst at the time was the anti-Semitism. That was really tough, and I wasn't out as non-binary or trans at that point, and that kind of came later, but was obviously out as queer, and that was it was really tough. I had a very good therapist at the time, so that was helpful. But it was pretty once I started kind of doing the first and second seasons, that was really in 2016. I mean, at the peak of the beginning of Trump, everything. So I was really being pretty viciously attacked, particularly on YouTube. And we can talk about the that as a specifically as a platform a little bit later. I've got some feelings that relate to the Instagram for kids stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was really tough. It was really hard. I learned to really take care of my mental health and put self-care first and work on truly having a work-life balance. And I have a partner and a dog, and we've kind of figured out how to balance kind of the intensity of our careers and our work lives with just like having like a really cozy nested home, and that's something that's really important to us, and that has been really important to me in making sure that I don't burn out, because this is long-term work. This is not something that's going to be solved in a day or a week or a month or years even. I'm in this for the long haul, and I know that that means that I have to keep my endurance, and that you have to have endurance mentally. And I've of course grown a thick skin through all of this, but it's really about taking care of yourself and understanding what your capacity is and how to put up boundaries around things. And in the past year, I hired a social media person to take care of my social media, because I knew I wanted to ramp that up as I was building community. And I know that like I have very real trauma around my social media accounts, and so I knew that this is a way, since I was, the business is starting to grow, I was able to do that. And that's not something I'd been able to do before this year. So it was really important for me that I knew that if I was going to start building my social media presence and being more active digitally again, that I would need to have that space for myself. So yeah, but it's very real trauma that I'm still kind of working through and figuring out what my relationship to my social media is. And it's an ongoing process.
I respect so much that on your program, you're not only talking about topics that you've planned ahead, but as you experience these things, that's reflected too. Like you're modeling the behavior of how do you deal with those types of experience. Like it's so true to who you are as a human being. Again, not this exaggerated kid-like caricature of who you are, but it's you. It's sincerely you, and that type of communication I think is so key as we keep moving forward. And these devices, the platforms, social media, it's going to keep evolving. It's going to constantly change. Something David Newell talks about, aka Mr. McFeely from the original Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he said so many times, the world around us changes. Kids are the same.
Hmm.
Human beings essentially stay the same. Those inner needs are consistent.
Oh yeah.
Same for us as adults. Yeah. the bombardment of it is a lot. I really respect that about you. So taking that, and I know you want to speak to YouTube, talking about what social media as we know it today in our adult experience. Well, for me, last year, as a dad, as a parent, speaking to mental health, I ended up just stopping, just not using it at all. I also did the same thing for Dajo's Treehouse. I just stopped going to that space because I personally didn't feel good about being a gateway for the families that I served. But on the other very important hand, you go to where the people are. If they're in this space that has all these positives but also unhealthy aspects, and you want to truly serve kids where they're at, you go there. That's something that I'm still struggling with, thinking about values. But if you're not reaching anyone and you're just talking about values to yourself, where does it go? So I'm trying to understand that balance. So yeah, we don't know what Instagram for kids will be, and not just through Facebook and pardon me, and Instagram, but Apple and Google, lots of big companies that aren't traditionally known for being in children's media are now saying, "Oh, this is a new those are the types of memos that are going out internally. This new demographic. This is an audience that we need to target." And my question is, why? There are plenty of other ways to teach young children the lessons and skills that they will need to successfully navigate the future of communication without putting them in the beast so early. And I think conditioning them to feel safe in an environment as a stepping stone. Oh, Instagram for kids, who knows what it'll be? I imagine it will be bright and colorful and fun, like a lot of kids media, and engaging, but it'll create this sense of, oh, this is a safe place. So why wouldn't I move into the next level, even though we can see clearly the mentally unhealthy effects of it? Those are things that I'm thinking about. How do you think about not only Instagram for kids, but you were speaking to YouTube and young children, and finding that balance, serving them in a space that is not necessarily healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me with YouTube, and like full disclosure, I'm actually part of a lawsuit that's currently suing Google and YouTube for discriminatory practices against LGBT creators. So I can't speak to the lawsuit, unfortunately, but I can speak to just kind of my experience on the platform. And I mean, with this kind of like wave of hate and like the backlash that I got on my channel for as long as I was uploading it, I turned the comments off and tried to turn off recommendations as well on the platform. And this is well before, this is maybe like 4 years before YouTube got the kind of COPA stuff, that like little baby slap on the wrist that they got on that. So I saw the danger of, especially the comment section for in like content for kids, and how dangerous that was, particularly with my content, because I was really trying to cultivate and build out a a world of queer kid stuff, of what I was doing that was very positive, welcoming, safe. And the platform that I was on did not allow me to do that. The amount of time and labor I would have had to put into moderating every single comment on that channel was just monumental. It was huge. It was impossible for one person who has barely made any money off of it. So that was really difficult. And so I turned off the comments, and that, hurt me in the algorithm. People couldn't find my work naturally, which is, I mean, the only reason I really got the success that I did, because of the press circuit around what I was doing. Otherwise, it would have been totally buried. And in terms of like the recommendation, kind of like that side panel that you get next to a YouTube video, all of the people who were calling me names and making these like horrific videos about me, those were all recommended next to my videos. So, and they would autoplay too, which is kind of the craziest part to me, because the thumbnails had my face in them. They could have been mistaken, especially by a child who didn't know any better. could have been mistaken as one of my videos. And that's how you go down the rabbit hole of radicalization, especially when we're talking about that for like young boys, young tween ages. That's how that happens. And and it's documented. There are stories of kids getting into kind of like alt-right white supremacist spaces because of YouTube. And that is exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to do in my work. And so this, brings together a lot of reasons why I essentially left the platform itself and have not been uploading new content to it for a couple of years now. But yeah, I mean, in terms of kids using these platforms, I think I'm obviously incredibly hesitant because of my experience with that and how I think the way that I used to describe YouTube, and I still do, is that it's really this like public library of videos, and that's awesome and great, and like has provided me a space to do the work that I do. But we have to talk about what a library is without a librarian. Like there's a reason why experts exist in those spaces who have multiple degrees and huge communities where discourse is going on, and they're looked up to as curators and as people with wisdom, and people who are their goal is knowledge spreading, is not capitalistic and profit building. And that is the difference. And I think what I worry about with other platform, and I mean YouTube Kids aside, I mean my videos aren't on YouTube Kids. Don't ask me why. And I'm sure there are a bunch of reasons, but that are not particularly palatable, probably. But I don't see a lot of effort being put into that space. I don't see. I mean, I also don't have kids, so I can't like speak to watching how children interact with these spaces. But I think it's really just a playlist, and like it's not. It doesn't seem to me like the effort put in is for kids. The effort is put into for business goals and revenue. And that's, the capitalistic system we live in. And I could go on and on about that. But in terms of like looking at Instagram for kids, and like what is worrisome to me is like, and this is obviously speculation, we don't have any idea what that's going to look like, but like what's the difference between giving kids input, so like them, children's media creators maybe having access to putting stuff on that space, versus what does family and friends look like? What does output look like? Do they post? Is it solely a viewership? Is it a creatorship as well? What is the sphere that they're going to have access to? And that's what worries me, because Instagram in particular is a highlights reel of people's lives. It's not authentic living. And that's something that I try and do on my personal feed. And I also have like pretty specific boundaries in the spheres that my work goes out to. Or I mean, these are my personal spaces too. I'm talking about my like personal Instagram, not my kind of brand Instagram, which is a lot more. It's not about my life. It's about kind of like what's going on in the world and just disseminating information as kind of a brand. But my personal Instagram, I have a pretty tight, close friends feed, and I really only post on my stories. And I try and give kind of like a width and breadth of, this is an exciting thing that's happened in my life, versus, and then like the next story is going to be like, I had a really terrible call with an agent the other day, and like this, getting to where I want to be is, it's full of ups and downs. Like no week is just all highs, and the authenticity of that is really important to me, especially within kind of like the community of people I'm connected to. But yeah, I don't know what that looks like, and I'm an adult who's been able to draw those boundaries for myself, and I worry about a large profit building corporation making those boundary decisions for children, and even for parents. Like I don't think parents necessarily even know what's best for their kids in terms of these spaces, because I don't think adults know what's best for themselves.
I think that's a very fair point as a parent, and yeah, it's very difficult to keep up. There's so much coming down the pipeline so quickly, and I know a big goal in our family is focusing on education ahead of time. How do you navigate real world, actual reality before virtual reality?
Hmm.
What are our values as a family and our philosophy? How do we treat others? How do we want to be treated? Taking that and bringing it into these virtual spaces, which are going to happen.
Hmm.
They're happening already.
Oh, yeah.
um, yeah, when these new spaces are being designed, something that gives me hope is knowing that advisors come in. Like I'm aware of people that are mentors and teachers, people that have been in the field of early childhood development and tech and children's media for a very long time. I know people are like that are being brought in as advisors. I don't know if you can speak to it or not, but I know recently you've taken on a role as an advisor for a well-known children's brand. Like I know that happens. And ongoing, like there's always going to be issues. Like there's always going to be these growth spurts, these regressions, in every aspect of communication. That's part of a process. But the responsibility of putting young children into the mix as guinea pigs, as the mice running around the maze, hitting the stimulation of, oh, this feels good. Going back to YouTube, surprise egg videos, the finger videos, the unboxing videos, those feel great. Like that anticipation, that ooh, oh, I'll watch the next thing in the algorithm. I want to, just like swiping on social media and getting the ding that it's conditioning us. Kids are so young children especially are so susceptible to that type of influence, and the responsibility that comes with that. What are we teaching? Why are we bringing them into this? It's hard to not assume a big piece of it is about making money, about monetizing people. Um, so yeah, I continue to be on a roller coaster ride. Like I hear stories that give me so much hope, and then I go back to, but why here? Why are we doing it? And why are we even talking about this? Um, my friend Howard Blumenthal was saying it's about process. It's an ongoing journey, but those things slip in so subtly, right? Those big changes 10 plus years ago. I think that we've talked about this informally one of the first times that we got on the phone, but when I first started hearing about young children as product influencers,
Hmm.
these virtual reality TV like play dates where innocently they're playing with these toys. The viewers on the other side are excited seeing them opening things and playing with things. And it's not like the 1950s howdy doody, hey, have a Tootsie Roll. It's not that. It's not a direct pitch. We drew a line in the early 70s. Hosts can't pitch directly. Friends shouldn't do that. There are these subtle ways of indirectly taking advantage of not only the viewer, but the presenter too. I know there's so many complexities with that. I know that kid influencers are loved deeply by their adults. Um, but it's such a norm now. Like that's a thing that producers are looking for, those sort of paths. This kid is a great brand. We can put their face on a lot of products. That kid's gonna sell a lot of stuff for us. That can be a really successful show. Um, and we're kind of flowing with that. And again, it's a complex issue, but this feels like the same sort of thing that's just about to happen. A big, not just a gradual change, but like a big thing. And if we're not wary of it, um, there's going to be consequences, mental health consequences, I think. So talking it out sometimes is all we can do, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, what are you hopeful for when you think of what are platforms that are like, well, this does work, a YouTube utopian future of children's media? Like what do you hope for?
Oh man. That's a great question. I really, really am excited about what's happening in the podcast space for kids. I think that there is just really cool stuff happening. I think that something about podcasting has just made it so I haven't figured out the words to really describe it yet, but I think it has so much to do with the way podcasts just like are available, and just like the system that has grown around it, because you're not dependent on like one company having like thousands of servers to hold your video. You have an RSS feed that you can plug in and can be distributed on any platform. There is no monopoly happening. And people who start podcasts, especially the indie scene, are not in it for the money. And I think that there's just like I'm a board member of Kids Listen, which is a kind of space where a lot of kids podcasts are, family podcasts, and there are a lot of kid hosts. So there's a lot of centering of children's voices, but you don't have their image, you just have their voice. So really, you're just listening to their thoughts and opinions. You're not putting any kind of stock into, what they look like, how they go about their day. You're not making any physical judgment on them. And I think there's something really interesting about the way that functions. You're also spending a lot more time with them, because with videos, it's all about the like 3-minute video. How many cuts and flashy things can you do to hold someone's attention? But with podcasts, they're in your ear for 20 minutes, and that's okay. There's just like a gentleness that is inherent to the platform. I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And of course there's advertising on podcasts, but it's about the person first versus the thing first. Because I think that advertisers have realized how valuable, and something that's really interesting is that the ad buy on podcasts is so much higher than any other industry. So that just like to make that fully transparent. So when a company or a product or whatever buys like an advertisement on a podcast, I'm not the person to explain this particularly well, but I just know that like per viewer, per listener on podcasts, it is a much higher rate that the creator gets. And that's because of how intimate the format is. And and a lot of other factors obviously as well. But the return on the investment is so much higher for the advertisers, because you're putting that person who you're very intimately engaging with in this way behind this ad. And I think that it's really, really fascinating. So I'm really excited about the podcast space as like kind of an up and coming indie space particularly for families. And there's no comment section on podcasts. I mean, you have like reviews on iTunes, but that's about it. And I think that I'm just really excited about that space. I think there's a lot of potential. I think it is a lot, just because of the medium, it's a lot safer. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in that. And it's really, I mean, for me, for queer kid stuff, we're trying to launch an in-house membership program for our educational resources. So we're really trying to move away from being reliant on sources of income that are coming from outside of us, and really trying to kind of bring our community in-house to build our own kind of like hub. And I mean, we're working with like our core values of anti-capitalism and anti-racism and queer centering, and there's no one that does that already. So for us to be able to kind of build a space with those values, and so we are kind of like figuring out how to do that in-house. So that's kind of I would love for that to become like a much bigger hub, and figuring out how to build like a real strong community over there, in kind of a space that we can build ourselves from the ground up. It's hard. It's much harder, but I think it's going to be a lot more fulfilling. And I mean, in terms of like working with larger companies, because of the way our system works, because we live in a capitalist society, those organizations are always just going to do what makes them the most money. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They do not care. They care about their profit margin. They care about their bottom line. They care about their investors. There is they can feign any kind of value, but for the most part, that's publicity. And I think that, if they're going to do Instagram Kids anyways without care for, the people they're going to be affecting by it, just because they see those dollar signs in it, like, bring in as many experts as they will allow, because at least it can be done with some semblance of responsibility, and hoping that those advisors will come from a place that does keep the children's and the families and the parents in mind, because the company itself is not going to do that. And that takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of skill. And I think that I've gotten good at it in terms of like queerness and helping organizations. If you're going to do a pride video, that is awesome. Bring me in so you can do it right. And I think that's that, because they're going to do it because it's started, because it is now, especially with this past year and this kind of cultural reckoning we were going through, social justice and these kinds of values, the things that I'm doing are starting to be beneficial to capitalism. And I'm seeing that happen. And I have feelings on whether or not that's good. I think overall, if we're trying to push the needle in terms of acceptance and diversity and all of these things around the world, we do need these organizations on our side, because they have the reach and they have been around for generations at this point, a lot of these companies, and there's no getting rid of them. So I think you have to work with them in order to reach the spaces that you wouldn't otherwise. Because I mean, my audience can grow organically, but how old is Disney? How old is that company? Like, that is decades and decades of growth and building up a community, a huge worldwide community. And they've already done that. They have that infrastructure. And that is not something that I can do in my lifetime, to build up the same kind of global reach. Because not only are you trying to build something from scratch, but you're also competing with Goliath. And I think that you can only do that for so long. So it's very complicated. It's a very complicated issue, and it's one that I'm personally grappling with a lot right now. But yeah, I think my goal right now is build my own garden while I'm attempting to become a snake charmer, and it's it's not everyone can have all of those skill sets.
I think people forget or just don't know a kid show creator host has so many full-time jobs,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and each of those jobs impact us at such a deep level.
Hmm.
It's hopefully if you're what I call a screen caregiver, you're offering your authentic self. You're not a brand, you're a human being.
Hmm.
And that's personal and special and yeah, it gives me, man, you inspire me so much and you give me so much hope when I hear about your process and what you're thinking about. Something else that you spoke about with podcasts, as you know, I take a pretty quote retro approach with my program. You look at the people that inspired you, the masters, you try to paint in the same strokes, and eventually you find your own voice, right? What was it said? The Beatles started off as a cover band.
Yeah.
We learn from those who come before us and we add our own spins, right?
Hmm.
I love that we so often go back to the things that worked so well early on. Like the first kids shows were on radio,
Yeah.
and radio is magic. Mindy Thomas, everyone at Tinkercast,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
it's using a tool that's so effective to speak to this moment in time and reflect our community, our diverse community, representation of what we really truly are. That's super exciting. Um, so great, you checked off the list. You gave us some hope. You gave us some thoughtful technique on how to navigate and really think about the spaces you're using. Going to YouTube, I'm running out of places to deliver my stuff because my sense is I don't want to do that. Now I'm not sure. I don't really want to do YouTube. It hasn't done me any favors with my growth because I don't like playing the game either.
Yeah.
Poor Copa. Um, where do you go? Creating your own spaces. There's another thing. So you were talking about a subscription based thing. So often people are like, oh, but I want free. I want it free. Like
Mm-hmm.
well, that's the stuff you really need to be wary of, because nothing's really free.
Yeah.
You're paying for it with your mental health, with your personal data. You're paying a price. You are the price. You are the thing being pitched. So yeah, when we can have our own standalone platforms where there's a reasonable buy-in to be in this safe environment, it's like signing up for a school classroom that you can trust, with a teacher you can trust, that like all truly good caregivers and teachers, they create these safe environments where truly everyone is welcome. It is you represent each and every individual kid and their families' cultures and traditions and beliefs, non-beliefs.
Ideally, yeah.
Ideally, that's what you should be. And it falls short for sure. You can be a talking head on a screen, and like you were saying earlier with radicalization, it's real easy to teach anything and make it feel true, absolutely true, and get in there.
Yeah, I mean, people used to tell me that I was brainwashing kids, and I'm like, well, yeah, what's education?
Yeah. Well, it's like so many things. It's intention. What's the end game?
Hmm.
Like, what's the benefit? Like, broader understanding of self and other is a huge benefit. That's important. Like that's a good baseline. Anywho, it's real easy to keep talking with you because I trust you, because I know you're for real.
Thanks.
So I encourage everyone to find Queer Kids stuff and know that it's a safe space, and you will have a lot of hope for not only the future, but right now. I haven't had another host yet, but hosts have this skill of being able to look through the screen and communicate with the people receiving on the other side. So I'm going to ask you to share whatever message you'd like to share with our peers that might be watching, our colleagues, our mentors, the future creators of children's media. What would you like to say, looking through that camera, to them before we say goodbye?
Ooh, I'd say if you have something to say and you are passionate about that and you want to better the world in this weird little bubble that we inhabit, keep pushing. It's hard and it's going to keep being hard. It's not really going to get easier, but you're going to collect people around you who care as well, and infect people with that passion. So I'd say, keep going, keep figuring out ways to build and build and build in ways that feel good and genuine to you, and just keep persevering because they're going to have to listen someday.
We're listening, Lindz. Aren't they amazing? I'm inspired. I hope you are too. Make sure you visit queerkidstuff.com to learn more about everything that Lindz does for every single child in the world, especially those in the LGBTQ plus community. It's a tough time for queer kids right now, and we all need to step up and support our kids and show them what kindness is all about. I believe deeply in that, and I'm sure you do too. Thanks so much for listening to Cookies for Breakfast.